We all have those moments with art sometimes where it's like, hey, it's 10 in the morning, I'm just listening to records, I did not sign up for this kind of emotional response, and yet there it is. This is the one that does that for me. Somehow every time I put on this song, I get a deep feeling in my gut, like my body and senses can't contain the beauty conveyed in this music. My emotions get overloaded by a simultaneous feeling of the deepest sadness and the greatest joy that comprise the state of being a living person. We often try to categorize these feelings as disparate entities, but how the most powerful art can show us the union of extremes and that feeling is feeling, it's a kind of alchemy that cuts right to the soul of our humanity, our spirituality. Judee performed a spellbinding rendition of The Kiss, February 1973, on the BBC's Old Grey Whistle Test, right before the release of her second and last album, Heart Food, and introduced it this way. This song is about the union of opposites that we all have, and a kiss is a symbol of the union. And while I don't claim to truly understand what Judee meant to convey in The Kiss, I can't help but note the curious parallel from my own independent experience listening to it. It turns out I was not alone in my visceral reaction to this Judee Sill song in particular. I recently listened to the brilliant 2014 BBC documentary The Lost Genius of Judee Sill, wherein Andy Partridge from XTC has a similar reaction, breaking down on the spot. A powerful moment, and I highly recommend the documentary. I'll link it below. By all accounts, Judee Sill was somewhat of a whippersnapper and lived a turbulent life, the majority of it spent in Los Angeles, California. The exact order of events is shady, but Judee had a violent and dysfunctional relationship with her mother and belligerent alcoholic stepfather who came on the scene after her father passed when Judee was 8 years old. As a teen, she committed armed robberies with an older male accomplice. She was finally arrested and sent to 9 months of reform school, where she played church organ, infusing her vocabulary with choral music and gospel stylings. Judee's mother died when she was 20 years old. She married musician Bob Harris in 1965, whose own collaboration credits include the Turtles and Frank Zappa, became a heroin addict and relied on such means as check forgery and sex work to fund her lifestyle. Sill was arrested for drugs and forgery in 1968. She was in prison going through withdrawals when she found out her brother had died. She then made a decision to seriously pursue songwriting as a career. Judee got herself clean and began networking, becoming part of the famous Laurel Canyon music scene in LA. She first scored a hit with the song Lady O, recorded by the Turtles in 1969. Judee recorded 2 solo albums, both of which sold poorly. Both Judee and her label Asylum Records began to lose faith or interest in her music career altogether. She later suffered a car accident, or multiple, which left her in constant pain and back onto taking painkillers. Judee died of a drug overdose in 1979 alone in her apartment at the age of 35. As the primary angle of this video is musical analysis, I've provided only a coarse glossing over of Judee's story to prime the uninitiated. There are many wonderful biographical resources available for those who wish to learn more, and I encourage you to do so. The Kiss is the second track from Judee's second album, Heart Food, released in 1973 on Asylum Records. The piano part to this song is in what I call my danger zone on the piano. That is the area that stays mostly below middle C. It's really comfortable for me and I tend to get trapped here. It's deep, rich, and warm, like a bunch of cellos. It's the danger zone because things can quickly get muddy depending on what else is going on in the arrangement. You may be competing with guitar, bass, or the vocal in this area. Luckily, this is only leaving more space for the vocals and the strings. The intro is a 5-chord, G7, with the tonic note C in the bass. I've always loved this trick, a suspension of sorts. It's a wistful, inevitable sound, like there's a change in the atmosphere, but the upper chord is lingering here in the past just a moment longer, holding on to that dominant before-itness, a sound of memory and reflection, the simultaneity of the present moment while invoking thoughts of the past. The upper harmonies ruefully roll into togetherness with the bass, but it's short-lived as the bass walks down to the verse in A minor. See how the last measure of Prelude in C from Johann Sebastian Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier uses the same trick. Falling into the verse of The Kiss, there's this rather painful sounding minor ninth clash between B in the bass and C in the upper chord. The first three chords of the verse consist only of the notes E and C in the right hand, rolling back and forth while the bass steps downwards, dictating the chord movement. That last bit is called a cadential 6/4. You have the 1 over the 5 note, the 5 chord, and then you resolve on 1. Although Judee adds the 5 over 1 to further delay the inevitable tonic. When the verse chords are played blocked like a chorale, you can really hear the Baroque form composition coming through. The verse repeats for the second line. And then we get into the B section, which I'll be calling the bridge. It modulates from the key of C directly to the key of E flat, or the parallel key C minor if you prefer, by means of a plagal cadence, 4/1. Meaning it doesn't go straight from C to E flat, the tonic, but moves from an A flat major chord first, which you may call the flat 6 chord if you're still thinking in C. I'm going to invoke my Tetris figure of the relative parallel key matrix used in my previous video on Elliott Smith to once again demonstrate the inherent relationship between these keys a minor third apart. That by sharing the root note of one of their primary chords, that is C major as 1 for the key of C, and C minor as 6 or the relative minor in E flat major, that acts as a channel between these two keys a minor third apart and is often thought of as mode mixture, or modal interchange, C major mode to C minor mode. It's interesting how the bass looks forward again with this modulation. So at that first ending of the verse, still in C, the bass walks down 7th B to 6th A. Then on the second ending, the bass walks down flat 7th B flat to flat 6th A flat, leading us directly into the new key. The A flat chord first moves to E flat major, but with a G in the bass, aka first inversion. Remember this G bass tone for later. An inversion is when we put some note other than the root note in the bass. A major chord in root position is root 3rd 5th. First inversion has the 3rd as the lowest note. Second inversion has the 5th as the lowest note. Inversions are helpful for creating fluid and tuneful bass lines that don't jump around too much. So from E flat over G, the 5 chord in second inversion, or B flat over F, helps us walk down to the E flat major in root position, then rides back up to A flat. When we modulate back to C major, that G from before is still in the bass. That's the second inversion of C major. Notice the sleight of hand here, how this portion of the bass line walking from A flat to G is unchanged, while the upper harmonies describe something different this time around. G is the one tone that E flat major and C major chords have in common, and Judee exploits this feature to make it seem like a more seamless, magical transportation between keys. G also serves as a dominant pedal tone, adding tension and expectation to the latter part of the bridge. More Bach. In my wish to keep everything in its original octave, I realized just how low Judee's voice goes in this bridge, and I had to sort of wedge it in the middle where it crosses between hands sometimes. I also admired the playful rhythm and jumping between octaves on E flat, really cementing that new tonic. In the second half, when it returns to C major, the melody attempts for that same octave leap. However, it takes a few tries. First grabs the third, E, then the fifth, G, then finally that C octave. The entire vocal range of this B section spans from E flat 3 to C5. That's incredible, yet you hardly notice. It isn't showy and every note sounds in place within the composition. Within this B section, the lyrics describe dreams and mystic visitors. The crystal choir, the sparkling hosts descending on fiery beams, both leaving her with an inner peace and a sense of reprieve or belonging. This bridge sums up a lot of my feelings about this kind of key pairing, with keys a minor third apart. To me, the higher of the two, or the flatter key signature, E flat in this case, feels like the easing of senses, reclining into a dream state. Anything goes, and the lyrics in the kiss exactly reflect this state. The return to the lower of the two, or sharper key signature, C in this case, feels like waking up, coming back to a day-to-day mentality with keen awareness that things are in fact what they seem. I'm going to go ahead and skip back into the bridge to show you a couple more things here. These moving sixths at the bottom here when we come back into C major are slightly different. The second time has F sharps and has a secondary dominant pull to it. Another special arranging moment. I love this walk up back into the verse. The vocal lingers on C for the lyric, and still I hear their whisper. And the strings and piano rise up underneath in stepwise tenths to meet it. We get that half-step clash again of B and C, but this time they are so near. I also noticed when transcribing this that the album version of The Kiss appears to be about a quarter step out of tune, a common device used in the 60s and 70s to sweeten up a track by flattening it or sharpening it a little bit. It made it difficult to play along to. My last note of interest is that The Kiss always feels like such a minor key song to me when I think about it, though in fact it begins and ends with a decisive C major tonality. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Please go listen to her albums if you haven't heard them, and if you're already a big fan, tell me what her music means to you in the comments. People are very passionate about Judee's music. See you next time.